I'm trying to do this more regularly. I know I don't have set times where I live stream, but I try to. I usually do it in the mornings now, or just early afternoon when I'm available. But I thought I'd do a live stream today just to talk about what happened at Speaker's Corner the other day, where a Muslim attempted to murder Hatun Tash, who's the face of DCCI Ministries. She, for those of you who aren't familiar with her, she works a lot with Jay Smith, collaborates with him on debunking a lot of the myths of Islam. And she is in a position probably where she is the most sought after person for jihadists to murder in terms of public figures, especially now that Tommy Robinson has sort of receded from the public spotlight. I don't know what he's up to now, but he's become less of a public figure. I think one of the reasons is because he's been, to a large extent, silenced from social media. He's been siloed off so that you can't actually watch videos produced by Tommy Robinson, can't see him on the internet. He's sort of been blacklisted to the same extent that the former president has. So that might be one reason that he's sort of receded from public view, and you don't hear that much about him these days. But ever since he's been consigned to this netherworld, one of the main targets for Islam, at least within the UK, and particularly London, has been Hatun, because of her bravery. And you can actually see the courage that she exhibits on a routine basis. Speak at Speaker's Corner in the video that was filmed as she was being attacked by this Muslim. She was able to defend herself. The Muslim who was attacking her was trying to slit her throat in accordance with Islamic scripture, which tells you to behead those who are basically defying Islam, who are rejecting Islam. It tells you to sever their heads, essentially. And that's what he was trying to do before she blocked his knife. So what happened was she had, I think, part of her arm or her wrist slashed, and then she also had her part of, I think, the side of her face slashed. And you can see the blood pouring down over her face, but she collapsed, and afterwards, and this is really remarkable, hi Richard, she stood and continued to witness to Muslims even after she had been the subject of the murder. And it's astounding. It kind of reminds me of an anecdote about Theodore Roosevelt when he was making his third-party bid for the presidency back at the turn of the 20th century. he ran as a member of the Bull Moose ticket, and an assassin shot him, I think, in the chest or the stomach, and he fell down and got up, and instead of being taken to a hospital, he proceeded to give a half-hour or 40-minute long speech. He basically completed his presidential stump speech. Definitely pray for her. Pray for the saints. Pray for the believers in London and in England, because they're really subject to something that's extraordinary. They are really living in the heart of darkness, and I don't. Londinistan is a neologism that was coined years ago. Melanie Phillips actually she called her book Londinistan, and this was, keep in mind, this was in 2004, I believe, or 2005. This was after the London bus bombings, the that killed I think three or four dozen people. The simultaneous tube and bus attacks that occurred in London, and this was the name of her book back then, at 17 years ago, and it's just gotten worse. Uh, and I think the first sign of this that you saw was the reaction to Salman Rushdie and the publication of his novel, The Satanic Verses, and of course, that book was that book's title comes from a verse in the Quran, which was partially redacted, but you can still see the beginning of the verse about Muhammad essentially serving as a vessel for Satan. And if you look at the Hadith, you can understand the 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 polytheistic pagan Arab worshippers in his tribe and trying to get them to come along with Islam. And one of the means he used to do that was to say that he had a revelation from these gods, these three deities, these three pagan deities. So essentially, he was saying that he had been given this verse by Satan afterwards. After after this was revealed, he said that he had been essentially possessed by Satan. Hence the name, the Satanic Verses. That they deny, even though it's in the Quran, or at least the skeleton of the verses in the Quran. So the Salman Rushdie, that was the first sign that revealed how deeply entrenched the UK had become. And people didn't realize, up to that point, they had just seen Muslims as imported workers, people who could go. And this was a widespread policy in post-war Europe. The Germans are probably the most famous for it. They had a program called Gastarbeiter, which was I'm not pronouncing that. I should probably do a German accent, but I can't, unfortunately. But Gastarbeiter, or guest worker program in Germany, was a program where they essentially imported Turkish workers to replace native Germans to do undesirable, unskilled labor. And it was a disaster, but this was something that was replicated throughout Europe. And immigration controls were loosened in the UK as well. And up until the Salman Rushdie affair, Muslims in the UK were looked at basically as that. They were looked at as replacement workers. They weren't seen. Islam was not understood properly that it poses to free speech and Western civilization. And the Rushdie affair, where you saw tens of thousands of bloodthirsty Muslims come out into the street and call for the execution of an author and an Anglo-Indian author, that was the first time that this danger was viewed. And unfortunately, nothing was really done to address this. In fact, the reaction more or less was to placate this threat. Hi, Warrior Woman. Yeah, I'm upset too. And what's most upsetting is really the lack of reaction. Someone, I don't know if it was Jay Smith or David Wood, but someone pointed out in a video yesterday that no one who has attacked Hatun has been arrested. So it's not it's not even like the grooming gangs, the Muslim Pakistani rape gangs in England, where there were people who were arrested years later. Punishment. No one, as far as I know, has been arrested for all of the attacks. She's had her foot broken, I believe, and she's been punched. And this is the culmination of a series of violent physical assaults by Muslims who were trying to murder her, who were trying to uh, who were trying to kill her and stop her from speaking about Islam. And one of the reasons she's such yeah, London cops are worthless. I mean, you see those you see those memes. And one of my favorite memes is the Doge, the London Doge meme, where the Shank meme, where it shows a London Bobby coming in after someone's been stabbed and asking them if they have a license to be stabbed, and someone says, "Oh, yeah, I got me license right here for stabbing from the Queen." And I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't a reflection of reality. Um, Simon Pegg actually did, which sort of parodied this years ago. Um, about how ineffectual the London police officers were, and it's a reflection of the corruption at the heart of this society. The cover up of the Muslim rape gangs. Hi, Jonathan. The cover up of the Muslim rape gangs. The cover up of the pedophiles that exist at the upper echelons of UK society, and this is you can all research this for yourself, but there were high-ranking members of MI6, of a labor counselors, not just labor counselors, but British MPs who were pedophiles, who were known open pedophiles and pederasts, who were protected by the UK infrastructure. And it's very similar in some ways to what happened in the Epstein case, only transposed to British society. Um, yeah, Speaker's Corner was almost empty. Aside from that stabber, you didn't see. And this is something interesting if you watch the video. And I'm not I'm not intimately familiar beyond what I've seen from DCCI and Jay Smith and other ministries, Bob the Builder, Soko Films. Beyond what I've seen from them online, I'm not too intimately familiar with the day-to-day workings of Speaker's Corner. Um, so people who are actually there can fill me in later. But there was no other Muslim surrounding her, which is very unusual. If you ever seen Hatun's videos, you'll see her surrounded by angry Muslims, either upset by her T-shirt or upset by what she's saying, upset by the gospel. And in this video, you'll notice there was virtually no other Muslims. There was just the Muslim that stabbed her and attempted to kill her. And all of the other Muslims had been gone, almost as if it were true, but it had been planned out in advance by a group of group of people. But yeah, the London police force is very useless, as is the rest of the UK, Scotland, Wales, and so on. And you see this if you look at the tweets that are produced by these police departments, these metros, you see them basically focusing on quote unquote hate speech, which is this term of art created by the left and progressives in order to demonize anything that goes against whatever their nostrums happen to be that that day or week or year. So whether it's criticizing sexuality or Islam or simply preaching the gospel, whatever it may be, hate speech is essentially defined as that, as militating against liberal nostrums. You know, immigration from the third world, or it could be, or saying that biological men are not women. That's a big one in the UK, and that's another illustration on a less I guess it's a less uh, urgent scale. They in the UK they put people in prison for being supposed transphobes, which means simply that they don't want society to conform to the standards of people who are mentally ill and think that they were born as another sex. And they prosecute these people, even though most of the people that they're going after in this case are radical feminists, and ostensibly or traditionally they come from the left. So I mean that's another example. But this is the big one because it has a lot of different cross currents that I think go to the heart of the issue, namely the transformation of British society, the gospel, which is an offense, on John 16. It says, "Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service." Now, the context there is Jesus is talking to is talking about the Sanhedrin and the Jewish leadership in Israel that persecuted Jesus' disciples and his apostles. But I think it has a universal application in the sense that there's a time when simply preaching the gospel will be something that is considered worthy of death, and the people doing it think they're doing God a service. And I think a lot of people need to understand that Muslims sincerely believe they're worshiping God, and according to their perspective, this is doing something that God or Allah would desire. And I think we have to pray definitely for Hatun and for everyone there who's going into the lion's den. But also, we should be grateful that we don't live, or most of us, street preachers in New York. For the most part, they just get derision and maybe laughed at, or for the most part, just ignored. It's not that confrontational. Regardless of where you're preaching, even if you're preaching in the middle of a heavily Muslim area like Jackson Heights, you're not going to get physically attacked. You're not going to get people aren't going to try to murder you for the most part. So we should be grateful for that. But it may come to that eventually. You never know, and this is just something to keep in mind. Yeah, you should pray for even the assailant, the person who tried to do this. The best outcome